Please rewind this cassette.
Brendan Fraser. We love him, right? And if you haven't heard the news, he's recently had a renaissance. He's made a comeback in Darren Aronofsky's The Whale, where he cries for 2 hours as he sits on a couch. There's a lot of Oscar talk right now that Brendan's going to win, and then this will be a revitalization of his career. He's going to be in the new Scorsese film. He was cast in Batgirl before the movie was shelved. So a lot of people are reflecting on Brendan Fraser. A big reason that this comeback's happened is there's a lot of nostalgia from millennials when it comes to The Mummy, because everybody wants to have sex with him and Rachel Weisz in that movie, and George of the Jungle. He was an icon. He was a huge icon. In fact, I don't think people quite understand how big Brendan Fraser was for about 10, 15 years there in the 90s and the 2000s. He was pretty much an A-lister across the board as a leading man, as a comedic actor, as a sex symbol. Everybody liked the guy. I remember going to see movies in the theater just because he was in them, or you would rent them on video. Everybody knows about The Mummy. Everybody knows about Encino Man. I mean, that's who I remember him as, is Link, the caveman. Everybody knows the ones that come up and about, like School Ties, because it's him and Matt Damon fighting naked in a shower. I'm going to bring up three Brendan Fraser films that I think have been lost in time, that I think reflect how good of a career he really had, because it's not the movies that make you famous that I like to remember people for. It's the movies that weren't so big, yet still reflected the quality in his choices as an actor, the quality in those movies that you watched on television or when you rented them on video, and it made you like the actor even more. And that's what it is with these three movies. None of them I saw in the theater, none of them were big hits. All of them got negative reviews or mixed reviews at best. Yet I saw all of them on home video, or they would come on TV all the time, and these are the ones that I watched the most out of any movies he made. And to me, these were like iconic, great films that everybody celebrated. And then if you go look it up, these films just got trashed by critics, and nobody saw them. And you think, like, is everybody crazy? These are clearly good movies. So I'm not sure what happened, but it's weird that he's winning now for a dramatic role, and that people are sort of talking about his career as an action star that transitions into this. In my heart, Brendan Fraser has always been a comedic actor first, and then everything else follows. So the three movies I'm picking all have comedic elements. That doesn't mean that they don't have serious elements or that he doesn't do more with the role, but I do think these movies demonstrate his range as an actor and his comedic sensibilities, which is why I was in love with him back in the day. Airheads. Yeah, that's right. Motherfucking Airheads. This movie kicks ass, just straight up. So if you don't know what it's about, you follow the Lone Rangers, a wannabe rock band that's fronted by Brendan Fraser. The drummer is a young Adam Sandler, and this is one of his first movies. He's actually doesn't have a lot of dialogue in this either. It's if you get annoyed by Adam Sandler in his movies, you might like him better in this because he's barely in the fucking thing. And then my favorite, of course, Steve Buscemi, is perfect to play like a heavy metal guitarist, and he's just absolutely hilarious in this. And this is one of the first times he was in a comedy like this, and I think it started that relationship with Adam Sandler. Of course, he would work with Tarantino and the Coen brothers and work on a lot of independent films, but he's just awesome in this. Like, he really steals it for me comedically. So the premise of this film is a play on Dog Day Afternoon. The three guys in this band, they want to get their tape played on the radio. Everybody keeps telling them no. So they decide to do a fake hostage situation where they take fake toy guns and hold a radio station with the biggest DJ in the city. And then everything gets surrounded by the cops and everything. It turns into a complete, like, movie cliche situation. It's Inside Man. And during that, they get their tape played, and then they start making demands. Then they become these like counterculture iconic figures for the crowd. Everybody starts cheering them on, and it just kind of takes on this energy. Like, Michael Richards is in this, and he's communicating with the cops, and he's trying to be John McClane and Die Hard and sneak around the radio station. Throughout the night, the people that they're holding hostage end up becoming more friendly with the people pointing fake guns at them than the cops outside. So this movie has a bent that is leaning towards an anti-authority vibe, like don't trust the cops, don't trust the man, rock and roll lives forever. which is all fun. There's a kinetic energy here that's like really awesome and was really attractive when I was young. I always really loved the pacing of this movie. It's also fairly well directed and put together. That's another thing about this that nobody talks about with Airheads and a lot of 90s comedies. It's just that they're better made than the typical comedy you're going to see nowadays, and they don't really make comedies anymore. Airheads is just really fun. You get to know these people. It has a classic structure. All the jokes, for the most part, work really well. And it has a nice payoff. Like, the guys don't get away with anything, but they still win in the end, which is kind of a perfect way to wrap it up comedically. It's one of the rare comedies that has, like, a really satisfying third act, and they pick just the right note to end on.
All right, let me ask you a question. What side you taking the big David Lee Roth Van Halen split?
What do you mean? What kind of question is that?
What side did you take, Halen or Roth?
Van Halen. He's a cop.
Number 2, Bedazzled. Motherfucking Bedazzled. A remake of a film I think that came out in the 60s, where a man makes a deal with the devil to live alternate versions of his life so he can win the heart of the woman that he loves. The trick, though, is the devil is kind of a bitch. I mean, straight up. The devil may promise you this deal that you want, like, hey, make me a famous basketball player. But then when you get that dream, she gives you a little dick. I'm not even kidding. That's what happens in the movie. This movie is awesome. Straight up, this is his most range I've seen as an actor because he has to play these different versions of himself. So we get to see him as like a sensitive beach hippie guy. We get to see him as a drug lord, a cocaine drug lord, and he speaks Spanish, and that whole sequence has subtitles to it, and it plays with a lot of cliches from movies. You get to see him as a basketball player. You get to see him as this world-renowned writer that's sophisticated and loved, and he's actually seducing her with his just wit and his way to speak like poetry. And then they go back to her house. They're making out. Everything seems like it's going to go great. They go into the bedroom, and his gay lover's in there. Now, this could be a dated early 2000s joke, but whoever this guy is playing his gay lover, and the way this guy is in this scene, it's just great. I don't care if it's outdated. It's amazing. I mean, look at this.
Wait, no, this is a mistake. I'm not gay.
Oh, really? And I'm Tony Danza.
I mean, that's just funny. That's just funny. Who the fuck wrote that? Who wrote that? Who wrote this movie? Great job. Great job all around. That's just good stuff right there. I really like the production value in this film. I like that every situation he gets put in. I mean, it does have kind of a flat 2000s look, but at the same time, like, every time you go somewhere in the movie, it's a new location. The costumes change, the makeup changes. It's just a different environment every time, which makes the movie really fresh. It gives it this, just kind of original, fun sort of feel that you think comedies would do stuff like this more, like just putting someone in different comedic situations. I guess you could say the movie's a series of sketches that are thinly connected by the premise of in the plot, the high concept, but what's so wrong with that? I mean, if anything, that's not too far from like a Mel Brooks movie was back in the day. Also, we have to take a second here to talk about Elizabeth Hurley. Did society just forget how attractive and sexually charismatic Elizabeth Hurley was? Like, did we just move on from her? I don't hear anyone talk about her anymore. And this bothers me. Not just being an Austin Powers fan, but just having a dick and understanding when you should respect certain things in life. She's in a schoolgirl uniform in this movie. Are you fucking kidding me? I mean, of course she's the devil. She's the hottest thing on the planet. Even her voice is sexy. I mean, Jesus Christ. This woman is like top tier. Like, she's just right up here. She should have played like Keira Knightley's mom in some movie that was really sexy, and it would have been the happiest experience of my life. But her as the devil, it's great. And her interactions with Brendan Fraser is great. And this movie has a great message at the end of it, which all good comedies kind of have. They have that sweet little message they tie up at the end that you can try to be anything you want in life to win people over, but ultimately you have to let people have their own path. You have to let people have their own free will, let them make their own decisions, and if that doesn't have you in it, that's okay, because it makes them happier. You don't need to be selfish enough to think that I need to change the world around me just so somebody will give me what I want. And that's what his character has to find out at the end, and he's rewarded for that way of thinking. Not that you shouldn't know that as an adult already. Like, I don't know why he had to learn the lesson of, like, you're not owed this woman's life and love. But it's a comedy, so it gets you through it. But there's just too many good bits in this. I honestly think of comedically, this is the funniest movie of the three I've listed. Like, Airheads is a really fun hangout movie, and this movie you could just watch by yourself, and you'll have a great time. So check out Bedazzled if you haven't seen it. Totally underrated. I don't know why it has a 6.1 on IMDb. Give this damn thing like a 7.5. Okay, the next up on our list is a movie that I think is the best movie of the three that I'm going to mention in this video. Airheads is probably the one I like watching the most, like on rewatch, just because I think the setting of them being in that radio station, is like always cool to go back to. But this movie, from a writing standpoint, from a filmmaking standpoint, I honestly think is a gem, and I'm still confused why this film wasn't better received. And that's Blast from the Past, which has the best premise of all of these movies. During the Cuban Missile Crisis in the 60s, Christopher Walken and his wife, they're about to have a baby, or I think they have a baby soon after this. Christopher Walken's built a bunker underneath this house. So him and his wife go hide under the bunker because they think that nuclear attack is going to happen here. And a plane just happens to coincidentally crash on the top of their house when this happens. So they think it's the nukes. So they stay down in the bunker for decades and raise their child who grows up to be Brendan Fraser. So they still, in their minds, think it's like the 50s or at least the early 60s. And they're running out of supplies. So they send Brendan Fraser now, who's in his 30s, up to the surface to restock the bunker. But he was raised by parents who've been stuck in the 50s, and now he's coming into like a cynical, edgy 90s.
Oh, my lucky stars! A Negro!
Say what?
It's kind of a reverse Back to the Future. Instead of a guy from the future going back to the past and bringing some modernity to it and his parents, it's about a guy who's stuck in the past going to the future and teaching them kind of old values that maybe they lost a little bit. There's a lot going on in this film. There's a cult that forms around him when he comes out of the ground that thinks he's like a Christ figure. He's talented in everything. Like, he can fight. He's intelligent. He's well-read because his parents focused all this time teaching him all these skills because they thought he was going to be the last person to survive. He's also has this goal of finding a female that he can bring down to keep populating the planet, which ends up being Alicia Silverstone. That's right, Miss Clueless herself. And she's great in this movie. And shout out to Dave Foley in this as well as her gay friend. He's absolutely great. I always thought Dave Foley was gay in real life, but I guess he isn't. He just has so many funny lines in this. And honestly, it's just a charming rom-com. You really like fall for the romance in this movie. The comedic premise doesn't wear out over the course of the film. They keep finding new and creative ways to kind of balance his character being out of time. But he also does like adapt a little bit more. He does fit in a little bit more, and he does grow up. This is a coming of age film, even though the guy's older. Since he hasn't been exposed to anything, this is his first time to really grow up and define himself. So it's more like the boy going out into the world and becoming a man. It even has in this end voiceover, it says something about the parents raise the kids, and then the parents get older and the kids raise them. And I think that's what the movie's getting at. I think it's about the cycle of these things, about how your parents are the ones that know what's right, they're in charge, and then at some point they kind of lose their touch with things, they kind of need help, and then it's up to the kid to become the parent figure. And I think that's what his character does at the end of this. He has to tell his parents that, no, this isn't what happened, and you guys need to come back to society, and we need to start over. Although Walken's character still like thinks about bunkers and is obsessed with the end of the world. Christopher Walken's amazing in this. What great casting, him as the father. And really some of the early stuff with them as the family is just absolutely hilarious. It's a great premise for a movie, but they also execute it really well with the way it's structured and the way it plays out. And they don't fight some of the realities that would come about. Like when he starts telling them about being from the 50s or being trapped in this bunker for years, they think he's crazy. You know, they try to send him to an insane asylum, which is literally what would happen in real life. You would think the guy is crazy. So that's the cool part about this. It doesn't play so much into the fantasy element of things as much as it actually uh, lets the audience be aware of what the truth is, but the comedy and the drama comes from the other people in the movie not being aware of it, which is fun if you're the person watching the movie. There's some other films you could mention. Gods and Monsters by Bill Condon. He plays a very nice dramatic role in that, opposite of Ian McKellen. Monkey Bone has its fan base. I'm probably not one of those people, but still, Monkey Bone's a weird movie. You're not really going to see anything else like it. And if you just kind of look at his filmography, he made a lot of weird movies. He did a lot of off the wall choices. He never did the same thing twice. He never really leaned on the fact that he could play a goofball idiot like he does in Encino Man or he does in George of the Jungle. He never fully embraced being an action star badass. And he never really leaned into being a romantic lead, even though he was all of these things. I mean, people forget now just the sex appeal of this guy. People forget now just like how close he was to being like Superman. Like he was on that level of stardom. But I think you have to look at these kinds of movies that is the ones that people were watching, especially in my generation, that burned him into our memories. And it wasn't necessarily, oh, it was The Mummy all the time. And don't get me wrong, The Mummy was a big deal and it's definitely aged very well. But it was all of these other movies. It was everything he was doing, just collectively contributed to like him being part of our childhoods. And then when he just went away one day, it just felt weird. Like, what happened to this guy that meant so much to me all these years? Because it wasn't like everyone stopped being fans. It's like we got up one day and said, well, I don't like Brendan Fraser anymore. He just kind of went away. And I think it had something to do with an ex wife and alimony and all that stuff. But I'm happy that he's back. But my hope is that he doesn't just go in this direction of chasing Oscar movies, doing Scorsese, doing Aronofsky, maybe doing a Paul Thomas Anderson film. I hope that he does embrace his comedy side. He's done it on Doom Patrol. He's very funny. He works as a comedic actor, and I would like to see him, stretch a little bit of that now where he's at in his career. Also, he's just a unique actor. You can tell that he's a very sensitive, empathetic person in real life. Literally, he cries every time I see him do an interview. So maybe there's a funnier way to do something with that. But I'll never forget the dude with the long hair back in Airheads. I'll never forget the sweetness of his character from Blast from the Past, and I'll never just forget the patheticness and the desperation of his character in Bedazzled. And all of these movies left a big imprint on me, and I think all three of them are hilarious and interesting and cool, and I miss them making movies like that. They literally don't make movies like this anymore, and I don't know if they ever will. Please like and comment. Tell me what your favorite Brendan Fraser movies are, or try to pick underrated ones. Don't pick the obvious ones. I'm challenging you to that. And see you guys for the next video. Thank you.